Greetings, I'm Elizabeth Emery, producer and host of Hear Her Sports, the podcast about exceptional female athletes and women in sports. Today my guest is Alison Tetrick, longtime professional road cyclist who just this year started racing gravel grinders, and she's proven herself to be the new queen of gravel, winning Dirty Kanza, Gravel Worlds, and Rebecca's Private Idaho. If you want to find links to any of these races that Alison talks about, go to the episode notes on hearhersports.com. Before we get going, I want to take a quick minute to say if you like this podcast, please donate. You can do so by going to the hearhersports.com donate page. Alison Tetrick is a professional cyclist currently racing for the Silence Pro Cycling Team. She didn't start riding bikes until much later in life. We do talk about that and how she got started. We talk about growing up as a sporty kid in a family focused on sports for life and how that gave her the confidence to sign up for the 200-mile Dirty Kanza, even though she had never ridden more than 125 miles. We also talk about the value of mentoring and how that relates to confidence, and some nitty-gritty about riding on gravel. I particularly love how Alison articulates for me the value of sport and how riding a bike or running or whatever it is helps ward off our own crazy demons. Alison is also actively involved in improving the future of the sport for women and for everyone, serves on the board of directors of the USA Cycling and the board of advisors for the Women's Cycling Association. I'm going to let her give you a rundown of everything she's involved with, so a big welcome to Alison.
I'm Alison Tetrick. I race professionally for Silence Pro Cycling. I've been a professional cyclist for 8 years. I was born in Solvang, California, grew up in Redding, California, went to college in Texas, and I'm currently in Petaluma, California. I have raced all over the world. Also, while racing, I've gone to graduate school, have a background in biochemistry, and I currently work with Amgen and with their disease awareness campaigns.
Wow, that's a lot of great stuff. I want to start out by asking how you're doing with the fires. Are you in Petaluma right now?
Yes, I did evacuate a couple of days ago. It looks like it's getting better, but it's still pretty smoky, and it's complete devastation, and it's the saddest thing I've ever seen. So it's been a pretty tough week here in Northern California. I
bet it has. I don't think that any of us not there can appreciate, if that's the right word, sort of what actually is going on.
Yeah, it's insane. It just kind of was a perfect storm, I think, and it's really unfortunate. And there's so many people who have lost so much. So I'm safe and I'm very fortunate for that, but it just is really, really heartbreaking.
Yeah. Is this going to affect your training, do you think? I mean, not to bring it back to that, but.
Well, for the last week, we haven't really been able to ride outside or anything. It's just the smoke level is so thick. And the closest fire to me was about 6 miles away, which has now been contained. So at least that threat has decreased. But I think it's definitely going to be a life changer up here. And I don't think it'll be the same for a very long time.
Right. So one of the things that I found interesting was that you have a long history of sporty life in your family. Your grandfather has won a lot of titles in cycling, and your father was sporty. How was that growing up?
It was fantastic. I think something with my family is that sports kind of for life. So I grew up on a ranch, cattle ranch down in Santa Barbara County, and then we moved up to Shasta County. And so we didn't necessarily play a ton of organized sports when we were younger because we lived pretty remotely, but we did a lot of activities on the ranch. I have an older sister, and she is my best friend, and we would just go ride horses, go run around. You didn't consider it really sport. You just considered it more playing or just work on the ranch. But my dad played football in college for UCLA, and he rides mountain bikes. He's a tremendous athlete. And my mom plays a lot of tennis, and she's amazing. And then, of course, my dad's dad, my grandpa, is 86 and still rides his bike every day and has 17 national masters titles and all this. And so we just kind of always were very active. And then I started playing tennis in high school, and then I played tennis in college. And same thing, my sister played volleyball in high school, and then she ended up running cross country in college. So it's just been kind of sports and activity and just overall like balance with being outside and and outdoors and moving around has just been kind of a part of our life. So it's been great.
Yeah, I bet. And how come you hadn't biked before? Because you started cycling pretty late.
Yeah, I started after college. My grandfather used to always say, "Oh, you should ride bikes. You could go to the Olympics. You could do all these things." And I was like, I don't know. I was playing tennis and pretty focused on that. I get very focused on one goal and task at hand. And I was a huge science nerd, so I was really into my studies and playing tennis. And I didn't really connect with the bike yet. I mean, I didn't really grow up in an area, I grew up on this ranch. So, I was riding horses or, running around, but I wasn't necessarily taking my bike down the block to see my friends because it's just not how we live. So to me, it was just kind of foreign. And after college, I was still pretty competitive. And I was working in a lab, science lab for doing chemistry research and drug discovery in Massachusetts. And started running because I had graduated college. I was still kind of feeling competitive and wanted to do stuff. So I started running a lot, and Boston's a really great city for that. So I was running and running and running. And then that only lasts so long. You start needed to cross train. So I was like, well, I'm going to sign up for a triathlon. I bought a bike and signed up for a half Ironman, and I took the bike to Colorado, and I surprised my grandpa. He was doing a local race, and I drove from Texas to Colorado with my new bike that I didn't really know how to ride. And he's at his bike race, and I ride up next to him. I'm like, "Hey, Grampy, look what I got." And he just, I came from 2,000 miles away with my bike to surprise him that I had actually bought a bike. And he was so surprised and excited. And
did he say what took you so long?
Yeah, he was like, all right. Well, then he realized. So then I stayed with them for a couple weeks or whatever and visited. And he was doing another race, of course, and a hill climb in Colorado. And he took me to this hill climb. "Oh, Allie, you'll do great." I didn't even know how to clip into the pedals. Like, I was just a disaster. But he just he had so much fun with that. And then it turns out the bike was pretty good. I did a couple races. I won a couple triathlons, but mainly due to the cycling effort. And I did a couple local races in the Bay Area and California, and moved back to California. And I really excelled. And I got invited to a talent ID camp at USA Cycling at the Olympic Training Center. I got a pro contract in 2 months, and I was racing in Europe on the national team within 2 months of starting to ride a bike. So I just kind of jumped full in, and it turns out I am pretty good at riding a bike. So I guess it just kind of found me in a weird way, but I like that it took a while. I mean, I think I did start riding late, and you, as a professional cyclist, you do benefit from riding for many years due to skills and just kind of natural tenacity on the bike. I have a lot of raw power, but just lack the years and years of the experience of that. But I think I've experienced other things, and working and playing team sports, and being able to be an NCAA athlete, and do all this fun things in other sports like riding horses or swimming and all these other things I've done. To find the bike now is great. Now I'm not giving up that bike anytime soon, though. I'm definitely now a cyclist for life. But
right.
I have experienced a lot of other sports, which I think has been really beneficial and kind of to my overall mentality in the sport now.
Sure. But how, I know a lot of women in the Peloton, don't like to see really strong women that don't really know about cycling come into the Peloton. So how did you learn how to, ride with a group and get those skills that you were talking about?
I really benefited my first year as a professional. I was on Team TIPCO, and this team was the best team in the nation at the time. And it had, double national champion Brooke Miller. It had Amber Reyes at the time. Amber Reyes, who's still racing, and she does incredible things with mentoring female athletes. Meredith Miller was on the team. Lauren Tamayo, Olympic silver medalist. This team was so stacked with really experienced but confident women, and they mentored me and taught me so much in my first 2 years racing. I look back just hoping I could do the same for somebody else, or realize how fortunate I am, because sometimes, when a new cyclist comes in that is strong and is showing promise, it's easy to feel threatened, or, you still want to stamp your place in the sport. And these women were just selfless and taught me so much, because I think I was young and receptive, and they were just very confident in their own right and their own experiences, that I learned so much initially that, that forever changed my life. And, of course now they're lifetime friends, but I think it's kind of the power of those mentors and those teammates, whether it's a team director or, just somebody on your group ride or your bike shop or on your professional team that takes that time to invest in you, give you a safe place without judgment, and also push your limits a little bit, because we do get comfortable, in your own skin. And also, like, I think sometimes, if you are really strong, you can be like, well, I'm strong, so I don't even know how to do that, or I know everything because I can beat you up this climb. But there's so much more to cycling than just raw power up a climb or in a time trial or whatever. I mean, you have to, there's a ton of other things you need to know as a professional that can help your overall success.
Hats off to them. I think that's great that they were willing to do that, because you're right. It's not everyone is willing to do that. And not every team is as strong as what you were talking about. I mean, mentally and sort of in confidence.
Yeah, I think it was because they were so confident and experienced. And I mean, my role on the team was just to be the development new rider. And it, no, I don't get it at that time. You don't get to do every race you want to do because you have to make the roster and you have to do all these things. But when I did, they would not put pressure on me, but still put just enough pressure that I was constantly getting better, and not let you have the cop out. Oh, I'm new, I didn't know that. Well, now you know that, so you don't do that again. It was some
right.
It was some tough love for sure. But I mean, it wasn't like hazing or anything, but I definitely had to do a lot of things, like, funny things, like in the race, they would be like, oh, Allie, go do this. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go do that, and then they'd be, hey, look what we can do now, and I would do everything. I'd go get bottles. I would go, oh, I remember giving a bottle, like, well, I didn't ask for water. I asked for electrolyte, go get me electrolyte. And I have to go back to the car and get electrolyte. And then they'd be like, this one's a little warm. Can you go get a colder one? Stuff like that. And I was just so eager and excited to be there. And now they go, I can't believe you did all that stuff. And I go, well, I loved you guys. And I wanted to prove to you that I was willing to, work and do my thing. So I think I did plenty of dishes too,
I think that sounds like hazing.
Yeah. But looking back, it was just this is perfect experience for where I was in my life and probably where they were in their careers too, and the team was super successful. We won another national championship that year. I mean, it was just a crazy year, couple years. And I think it's just the power of team and sport and people willing to give back to each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of winning, I'm really jealous of your World Championship bronze medal in the TTT. That's just absolutely my favorite event in the whole world ever.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so painful.
It's so painful, but like when you have a good team, there's just nothing like it.
Yeah, that was another one of those experiences. I switched teams mid-season and I went to Astana, and I kind of needed to probably take that jump sooner. But like I said, we do get comfortable in your own bubble and space. And I knew I needed to challenge myself. And, Mari Holden was so encouraging, another woman that gives back to the sport. And she's a world champion, Olympic silver medalist herself. And she was like, okay, Alison, it's time. Like you need to grow. And in order to grow, you need to get a new experience. So flew over to Italy with a one-way ticket and hopped on Astana and did some of the, a huge block over there for most of the season, honestly. And it was so challenging, being on a team where no one's speaking English. I learned Italian. I was living with these wonderful group of women, and we just went to battle each day with each other at some of these hardest, European races on this beautiful team. And we never really trained for the team time trial, but we just kept doing all these races, and I'm learning tactics in Italian and how to coexist in this wonderful team. And we went up to altitude training camp. We did all these things. We just rode together all the time. And we were I just followed whatever program, they had the training program he had us on. And we rolled up to Team Time Trial Worlds, and I was so ecstatic to be there. It was in Ponferrada, Spain. And I was so happy just to be at Worlds and to be with these girls that were now still lifetime friends. And I'm like smiling at the start line, like, take a picture. I'm at Worlds. This is great. I'm in light pink or light blue. I love my Astana kit. Like, I'm so excited to be here. And the girls, we were just laughing, going, we've ridden in a team time trial like 3 times. Like, we did some motor pacing together, and we rode the course a couple times, and we were all just going, we're crazy. What are we doing? Like, we don't know what we're doing. And then we get on the start line, we're, waving at the fans, we start, and we just go so fast. And on the radio, he's like, oh, you guys are the fastest. You are the fastest. And we were like, there's no way, and we did. We had this incredible ride, and it was almost like another one of those perfect experiences that you can't ever recreate. It was these, 6 really strong riders that we really trusted each other, and we had definitely worked so hard together for the year, and to show up without necessarily a lot of, all that like kind of sexy technical preparation with, the best skin suits, the best air helmets. It wasn't like that. It was more of just like a lot of heart. And so a lot of heart and like pain and suffering and believing in each other and trusting each other. And at the end, we were seriously all crying because we couldn't even believe we were like the little bad luck bears that got bronze. And I don't think there was a more proud team to ever get a bronze medal. Now I look at the podium every year and I'm like, I don't think there'll ever be a team like my little team that got that medal. Because it was like we freaking won. Like, we were so excited. We felt like we won. Yeah. And that was probably one of my most favorite memories in cycling.
See, that's the beauty of the Triple T.
Yeah. We just kept going. I mean, well, there was some profanity in there because, but we were just like, holy. And I had all my teammates saying that, and they didn't really know what they were saying.
Right. That's great. Yeah. So what team are you riding on now? It's pronounce it because it's sort of an interesting spelling.
Yeah, it's Silence Pro Cycling.
Okay.
So I've been on Silence Pro Cycling for 2 years. It's a fantastic team. It's American registered. We do all the entire World Tour calendar. So the last 2 years, we haven't missed a women's World Tour race. It's a really, really great sponsor. So Silence is a malware company. So it's, cybersecurity company, and they've been really invested into the women's cycling now as our title sponsor, and they will be sponsoring the team next year as well. So it's just been a great team, and Manel Lacomber is the director. He's Spanish, and the team is pretty mixed. I think this year we had 7 different countries on the team, so a very diverse team. So I love that.
And they've been really supportive of your interest to do gravel racing.
Yes, it's been awesome. I wanted to make sure I could do some gravel racing this year. The year before, I was watching it from afar, trying to see how I could do it, and racing every single World Tour race. I mean, there was just no way. And this year, I wanted to lighten up the schedule a little bit to do some more adventure racing, and it's really good. I mean, Cannondale makes really good equipment for that, so we could kind of capitalize on our very quality team partners and just to kind of show up at a couple key events, which, I mean, another one of my favorite cycling memories now is going to be winning the Dirty Kanza this year. So I'm not taking that one back either.
Right. What was the attraction of gravel racing?
I've done road racing now for 8 years at a very high level. And like I said earlier, I mean, I jumped full in and just kind of been going full gas at this level, give or take a lot of, injuries and setbacks along the way. I was looking for something to do that was a little more adventurous and outside of my comfort level. I don't mountain bike or do cyclocross really at all. Probably ridden a mountain bike under 5 times in my life. I'm very, very roady. I think it's the science-based side of me and my personality. I kind of like the monotony and the training and the predictability and all these things. So for me, I love riding my road bike, but I was looking at these places that the gravel bike could take you, which it's a similar geometry. You kind of feel like you're on your road bike, but you can cover more rugged terrain. And then the other thing I love about riding is the views and these, the community out there, and the getting on dirt roads. You can go out to some, gorgeous places, and it brings together, I think, even almost a larger cycling community. So it's just really fun. Like, I really like the all-inclusive. I like the mass starts. I like, there's more women out there, and women get really good when the distance starts getting longer too. Like, everyone can do this, and it's so fun. And you kind of you can race and challenge yourself, and you can do as good as you can do that day. But then if you have a bad day, it doesn't really matter because you still finish this like gnarly route, and you're still tired at the end, and you can still have a beer or whatever with your friends and barbecue and hang out, rather than as much pressure on who's winning or who's losing. It's more about this experience. And I just think that's so cool. And I'd never ridden my bike that long before, so I wanted to try it out.
I was just going to ask, I mean, You certainly jumped in whole hog. I mean, you hadn't ridden your bike that long, and then you did the Dirty Kanza in June, and then the Gravel Worlds in August, and then just now the Grapes of Wrath in October.
Yeah, I did Dirty Kanza. The longest I'd ever ridden my bike was 125 miles, and that was like 3 years ago. And I was like, oh, for sure I'll be fine. And people were asking me, how did you train? I was like, I don't know. I did tour of the California and Pan American Championships. I don't know. I hadn't done much, so in that long space. But I've raced my bike a lot, and I ride my bike, so I was like, I think I'll be fine. And it definitely, I was pretty comfortable until about that 150 mile mark, and then I just hit. After about 6-7 hours on the bike, 8 hours. That's, I think, at the Dirty Kanza where it gets just real. Like, it's just a whole new space of where you're at and what's going on. And then I went to Gravel Worlds, and I won Gravel Worlds, and it was so fun. Different terrain, then you learn too, like gravel racing, like the type of rock is all different, the type of gravel, the type of field, the tactics. I mean, everything is different. And then I had to go to Rebecca's private Idaho, because Rebecca is who encouraged me to get into gravel racing, and we share the same coach, Rebecca Rush. And so I went to her event and did the stage race. So I did a gravel stage race, which was more taxing than I had imagined, because I do world tour stage racing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I know how to stage race. But I think just 3 consecutive days on the gravel, I was like, oh, I am tired. Like, this is hard work. Yeah, so then I popped into this Grapes of Wrath event over the weekend. It was they said it was 134. I'm going to tell you it was 140 miles. And I probably should have read the race Bible, but I had an event up in Napa that, unfortunately, due to the fires, was canceled. So it was a last-minute thing, and I saw this event down in Central Valley. I got to try that out. And I didn't really read it that well, like what I was going to get myself into. And we start, and they're like, okay, so at about mile 60, you take a left turn, and then we're going to start the climb. I was like, oh, good, I like climbing. And they're like, yeah, it's 34 miles long.
I saw that. Like, oh, my God.
The climb is 34 miles long. They go, yeah, you climb 12,000 feet in 34 miles. I was like, oh, who signed up for this? Like, when was somebody going to tell me? And they're like, you could have read it. I was like, yeah, oh, well. So.
Well, since you're new to gravel riding, what are your first impressions?
Like I said, I really, really love it. And I mean, I started with, let's say arguably like the ultimate gravel event in the world at the moment, which is the Dirty Kanza. And I jumped in there, and I utilized a lot of my resources to try to plan for it, as far as texting, Ted King, Tim Johnson, Yuri, people who had won it, Rebecca, I'm like, what do I do? But as soon as I got into the town of Emporia, Kansas, it was just this crazy, welcoming, amazing, like, tribe of people that you just love immediately, because it is very inclusive and supportive. And so my first impression was, oh my goodness, I never want to leave. I think this is a really cool side of the sport. And yes, racing these, famous races all over the world is awesome and challenging, but this is just suddenly you're connecting with all these people that are going to do the same event as you. And yeah, you might be racing to win it, and other people are just trying to finish it. But I think bringing all these people together is just super cool and really encouraging, and I think it's good for the sport.
Is for people who haven't ridden the gravel races, like, what's the difference? Like, what would be the most different thing from road riding or even mountain bike riding?
I think that a little bit of a difference is a lot of these gravel races, which is probably similar to mountain bike, but not a little different, is they're a little more like adventure style racing. So a lot of them are self-supported. If you're like Dirty Kanza and Gravel Worlds, it's parts of Rebecca's was, you have to navigate yourself. So you download the file into your GPS, you navigate yourself, you're bringing all your equipment that you need, versus relying on support or, team cars or pits per se. So I think there is a great deal of kind of self-responsibility that way. But I think you feel more accomplished in a way, but you have to be way more prepared. You got to look at the course or understand these things. So that there's that. I do think the mass start, men and women all starting together is, pretty fun. It kind of has that kind of Gran Fondo feel in a way versus, other types of events. And, from like road racing, if you get dropped, it's, you're out by yourself and everyone can see you lap after lap at a criterium or something. If you're dropped, we've all been there. At least I definitely have. And that's like kind of mortifying. Whereas in like a long gravel event, like everyone's going to end up riding by themselves at one point, and that's okay. Like you don't have to be in a big pack going, due to the terrain and the high rolling resistance and, all sorts of mechanical issues that can happen. You end up being by yourself for a while, and that's okay too. And you get to kind of meet a new version of yourself, and it's usually a pretty crazy side of yourself. And then the people you do see out there are like you, and then you can meet new people that way. The Dirty Kanza and gravel worlds are on like more rolling terrain, so they're just like constantly like power climbs. You're not doing like anything super high speed and like crazy technical, but you're just constantly moving and rolling. And then other ones like in Rebecca's, you do big climbs and big descents. So,
right.
I think it just depends on the event and kind of how they're targeting it, because there aren't really any rules to these events. So as a promoter, you can kind of just make it up on your own. So whether you have pit stops or how you want to make the rules, or, whether you have to take a shot at a rest stop or get a pipe cleaner, or however you prove that you were there.
Right. I think it's really
Um,
interesting what you were talking about. You have to be prepared that you can't rely on sort of your support team to, know the course for you, or, have your equipment ready and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a fun side. So then that opens a whole other part of the industry where now you're looking for, what bags are the best, and so now companies are creating, I know Camelback just came out with this like really cool new, hydration pack made more for like the gravel racing. It's really comfortable, a little lighter weight, because you don't need to be packing like overnight stuff in there, but you're packing just enough to feel comfortable in the road position. So there's market for kind of this new adventure style racing for equipment too, which is super cool. Like gravel bikes are now a thing, which are technically different than a cross bike. You don't have to be, but they can be, so there's kind of like no rules on that, but that makes it really fun.
Yeah. You also mentioned that the gravel races are mixed, so the men and women start together. I sort of expected to see more women racing, and I just looked at the numbers for the Worlds, and it was 27 women compared to 245 men. And in Dirty Kanza, there were 123 women compared to 698 men.
Yeah,
so it sort of surprised me. And even in the younger categories, there was like under 29, there was a big difference as well.
Yeah, I think that's where our sport is. But I'm hoping, I think actually that gravel racing and some of these kind of more event activation and things are going to appeal to more women. And I think it's growing. But it is the nature of the sport. And so, constantly thinking about ways to get more women involved. And I know the Dirty Kanza did this really great push, 200 women, 200 miles. And I do think they ended up getting 200 women to sign up for the Dirty Kanza 200. They did do that initiative, but it still is not, obviously 50% women or anything like that. But it's just, how do we create a safe place and the right environment to appeal to these women, because they're out riding their bikes, but sometimes it's hard to commit to these events. I think there's a lot of obligations and a lot of balance going on. So I think it's a good outlet to get more women involved, and I'm happy to keep pushing for that and exploring ways to be able to communicate that.
Yeah, it's such an appealing race style, I think.
It really is, and it's like I said, it's really, it's safe. It's not like you're doing these like I said, you're not doing these like crazy turns in a big pack and dive bombing corners and sprint finish. Like, well, I did sprint finish, but you know what I mean. It's a little different mentality, and so I think and especially how you choose to do it, a little less stress that way. And so I think it's just kind of communicating that, and then also like industry, athletes like myself, like what you're doing, just kind of explaining this side of the sport and how to get more women like out there, because I honestly wouldn't have thought I could ever do something like that if it wasn't for a really strong woman, Rebecca Rush, telling me, hey, come out and do this race. You're going to love it. Like each year, come do, her event. She's even putting on an event, and how she gets more women out there and in participating in her sport. It's just like that. It's like people being encouraging and trying to like at least be able to explain what our sport is and why you would love it.
Right. Certainly there are plenty of women doing marathons, and it's, it's similar in a way.
It is similar. The cycling is, it is equipment intensive.
Yeah.
It's believe me, sometimes when I travel for work, I'm going, I wish I love to run, but I want to ride my bike, let's be honest. And so I go, gosh, it's hard, if I'm going to go to work for 2 or 3 days, like, okay, how long am I going to be at work to then, make sense if I'm going to travel the bike or not, or, can I squeeze in that bike ride, but then I got to build it, or, it's all these things. And so it is hard when you're traveling and doing, or, with your family life too. I mean, it's relatively a time consuming and an equipment intensive sport, but I think once you get kind of that starter set up, then you're golden, and it's just so fun.
Other than what you've already said, is there anything that you would say to women who are thinking about it or hadn't heard about gravel racing to encourage them?
Yeah, I think you just have to start somewhere and, pick a small goal and look at it in an events calendar. And maybe, I would highly suggest some of these ones like Rebecca's Private Idaho, or, some of these fun, and like a lot of these communities have grassroots, gravel racing all over the country. Now that I'm in this sport more, I'm getting all these messages, oh, check out this event, check out that event. Like even this Grapes of Wrath one I did, there were more women. There was a 50-mile option. It was great. So maybe you start with a small goal, see if you like it, and go with a friend or something too, because I think I like doing this with people I like to ride bikes with. So if you take your training partner with you and you guys make a girls weekend out of it, or is it a family weekend or whatever, and you can go out and just enjoy this together and kind of make it an adventure, I think that's really fun. So it doesn't have to be intimidating, and you don't have to necessarily do it by yourself. I like to go with people, so I know someone's looking out for me too.
Right.
But also, like, I think sometimes I couldn't even tell, but like if you go on the calendar of your local community and to see what's there, because sometimes these events are even, less intimidating because they're under 100 people are even there. So you're not in this massive 2,000 people doing this, sold out event. You're doing kind of just a local, more low key gravel event. And then you're going to know more people. You're closer to home. It's easier to travel to, and just to go out and try it, and just to see what you think.
Yeah. And they're not all 200 miles. As you said,
No.
There are plenty that are shorter.
No, yeah, there's like down in Southern California, I'm going to try out a former professional male cyclist. He does a event called the Expandex Stampedes, and they're 50 miles, pretty chill, and they start and finish at a winery. I was like, okay, I'm going to go check out that event. Yeah, that sounds like that's my I would say cup of tea, but I'll say I guess that's my glass of wine.
Right.
That sounds right up my alley.
Yep. Hey, so we talked a little bit about women, and you were one of the founding members of Women's Cycling Association. Are you still involved?
I'm on the board of advisories currently, but I'm not hands-on every day with that. But I do know that Robin does a fantastic job, and she's a good friend of mine. And I helped initially begin it, and I have since just been kind of consulting, or if they have, any questions, and helping out from there. I also serve on the board of directors for USA Cycling, so that's taken some time as well.
What's the current status, do you think, of women bike riding and women racing?
I think internationally, just that's because that's my wheelhouse at this moment. Internationally, I think with the Women's World Tour, it's growing. There's a little bit more pressure for equality and things like that. An increase in race days, with the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, et cetera. Like this year was awesome. More teams, but every time more teams come in, more teams leave. So as far as professional cycling in general, there's been huge strides since I started, but then also part of it makes me think it's still the same. Because, with one good thing always comes something maybe that's a little step back. But I think that the UCI has really taken some big steps forward with these race days, and kind of increasing the level and showcasing women's cycling better. And that's what the sport needs ultimately to succeed, or to find more of a higher standard. It's hard to sell sponsorship and TV and all those things to a sport that isn't showcased. So we need a little bit more publicity there. But I think the level is so much higher. The level, our depth is getting much higher. There's so many good riders out there that are super passionate about the sport. And I would just like to see us be able to tell their stories more,
right.
To a larger platform, because I think more people know about the sport than we get more support as a sport in all. And then, in the U.S., there is an entire team, USA Cycling and, these local associations that are all really trying to push, how do we increase women's cycling, whether it's visibility or just make sure that they're coming to the races. How do you do the categories where it's friendly for them to come and the best option? So there's pros and cons to all of that, but there's a special committee for, the women's committee to look at this agenda and look at what people are doing successfully in some areas of the country and then how to recreate that in other areas to keep that momentum going. So it's definitely, I think, on the forefront in a lot of people's mind. It's just, if we all had the answer, it'd be easier.
Sure, it'd be done already.
I mean, I'd like the whole sport in general to keep finding, positive strides, whether it's rider safety, race schedules, all of this. Also, of course, for women's cycling, I think that that's going to be important to keep that momentum going. It's frustrating, when you think, okay, oh, great, we've had this La course, now we've had on the Champs-Élysées several years, now we're doing the climb, but, hopefully we can get multiple days, it's still
right.
A one-day event. So stuff like that, you're looking forward to hopefully keep advancing that as it goes on.
Yeah. So what's next for you? What are your goals for the next few years or next, 5 years?
Yes, my 5-year plan.
I don't have a 5-year plan, by the way.
Okay, I was like, I feel a little nervous here. So I something I've always strived to do in my sport and for me personally is to make sure I have the appropriate life work balance, and my work can either be communications work I do or as a professional athlete, and then also just for me personally. So it was hard initially because I was so entrenched into cycling when I first started, and definitely had a lot of stars in my eyes because I just found this beautiful sport that I love. I was good at it, so there was a lot of positive reinforcement, and I got very into that sport, and then I had some really bad injuries, and it had to make me realize how important life balance is too, and that you can't have one thing define you, and you need to make sure you take time to do other things and invest in yourself. So I think I'd like to continue doing that. I think I've been much more successful at that the last couple of years. So whether it's, I've always worked throughout my entire career just to make sure there's always something, because you could crash on your bike, you could never be able to ride a bike again. A lot of things can happen, and I didn't want to not have a backup plan. And so I wanted to make sure I had something that I wanted to do and was interested in. So I would like to continue doing that part of my job, but then also as an athlete, finding more ways to be, I think just using my I don't know, my brand or however you want to call it to increase the impact, and whether that's getting more women out there doing some of these fun events, inspiring men as well to keep challenging themselves, riding bikes and, giving back to their communities. I think the bike is a very powerful vessel to do a lot of good things. And, we can use it for charity events and raising awareness for all sorts of things. And so how do we continue using bikes as this kind of really fun way to challenge yourself, find out a whole new level of crazy of yourself, but also bolster our communities and do powerful things. So I want to keep challenging myself on the bike and pushing my limits. So I'll keep targeting specific races I'd like to do, but also while I'm doing that, I would like to hold myself to a higher standard to bring more visibility to our sport in a positive way. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I feel like I've done this sport for long enough at a very high level, I guess the highest level in the world. And I'd like to make sure also I can give back to all these grassroots and, all these other awesome things we're doing out there.
That's fantastic. So, I often have trouble articulating why I think that sport is so important. I've said sports is not just sports, it's sort of reflective of everything else. I mean, it sounds like you feel the same way, that sport is not just sports and it's important for a lot of other reasons.
Yeah, I think it's just transcends way past just being sport. Yes, you can win or lose, et cetera. But that's why I think I like some of these gravel events, because it is less about the ultimate result, although I wear that belt buckle all the time. All the time. It's about when you go out, it's really not about even the result. It is about the process. I know it's always easier to say that, and in the moment you're stressed and you want all this stuff. But like, you learn so much about yourself when you're training for something, when it's dark in the morning, you're trying to get a ride in before work, or you're getting a ride in after work, or you're suffering at the climb trying not to get dropped by your friends, or you're, all these times that you kind of suffer and find these like dark moments in your head, and you can solve world problems on the bike. It's a really great outlet. I mean, I need to go ride my bike to kind of get rid of some of my crazy. I've got a lot of energy. I'm a little crazy in my head sometimes. So I need to make sure that I can go out on my bike for my own therapy and soundness of mind. But also I think sport can parallel something so much more powerful, because somehow it unites us together. Like when you go and ride with people or complete an event or train with somebody, you've gone through this whole experience together, and you feel more connected to your community because you saw the beautiful views, to the people you're riding with, and to the whole kind of introspective time you had in yourself. So I as a woman, I think it really empowered me as well. And my family, being so active, I never considered any sort of gender, equality or anything like that, because I was just raised to be a strong, powerful woman, like just a person, like a strong, powerful human being. And I could do anything that I wanted to. And that's what my parents told me I could do. And I believed them, and it took me probably until after I graduated college where I realized, I wonder if that was true, or if I was just told that. But realizing that's kind of what my family and what sport instilled into me. Like, I want to go and do Dirty Kanza. Yeah, I can do that. Sure. I didn't even doubt myself ever. I just thought, yeah, I can do it. And I think I can win. And to have that level of confidence, and I think that sport gave that to me. And even if I didn't win, I'd probably be like, well, hey, I gave it a good try, and I learned this about myself and this about the event. And I got to meet all these really cool people, So there's positives always, because sport, and especially in cycling, because it's an individual sport. You can say it's a team sport as you watch the Tour de France and, the racing I do on my team. Yes, it's a team sport. But ultimately, it's individual, because you have to pedal your bike. You have to be mentally strong. You have to take that corner this way. And you ultimately have to get across the finish line and do your job to get there. So you learn so much about yourself that way. And so really, yes, there's a race against you and 2,000 other people, but there's also a race just against yourself. And then you always win, because there's a winner and a loser. And if you're racing against yourself, like, somebody's going to win. So ultimately you do learn something. And I think, though, that makes you more powerful at work and in other things you do in your family life, because you know what you can conquer in your own head and what your body can do. And then you really can do anything you want. Like, you can just dream it up and train for it and get ready for it and do it. It's part of that process.
That's a great message. I love it. Thanks. It sounds like we're going to see you doing some more gravel races next year.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I'm like so sold. I don't even know. It's pathetic. It's like all I want to do now. So.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to change your training at all?
I don't think so. I just had a talk with my coach. I hadn't really thought about it, because this year we didn't really do anything specific training. We just raced. So, I think normally this time of year, maybe I would have been taking an off season or something, but the weather's so nice, and, there was just a 140-mile option. Like, I'm going to probably try to just embrace more of these events and go to more of them and to check it out as well. And just because I enjoy it. And when I have fun, I go harder, because you're not thinking about the pain. Yeah, you're not thinking about the pain as much, because you're around a bunch of cool people and, great venues. So I'll probably just do maybe even a little more events and a little less focused training. But I think with that is going to come some reward as well. Because if you have fun, like I said, a little bit of fun without the pressure, sometimes you can really dig out some crazy efforts.
Yep. So just some wrap up questions. What's your favorite recipe?
Favorite recipe? For what?
For whatever you like. Or you can, what's your favorite post-ride meal? What's your favorite food? Like,
I love all foods. So, I have a really great recipe from my mom, which I think is from my grandma. We make some good homemade buttermilk pancakes. And since I was born in Solvang, pancakes are like Danish pancakes, so they're thin.
Oh, I love those.
Oh, yeah. And, they fold them over. So that's how we make pancakes growing up. So I never understood those real thick now I like them, but I never had the real thick, typical, American pancake. I'd always had these like Danish pancakes. So I have a very good recipe for some Danish pancakes, and you cook them on the griddle, and they're just like super thin, put a little powdered sugar on them, butter, syrup, egg. I love it. It's so good. And yeah, so I have a very good recipe for that. And then my favorite food, I like all food, but growing up in the Central Coast area, we have this favorite way we barbecue a cut of meat called tri-tip. And it's kind of like a tenderloin steak, and you cook it over an oak fire. And so it's like called Santa Maria style tri-tip. And I like it like medium rare, almost a little on the rare side. I'm total cowgirl.
Yeah, no vegetarian for you.
No vegetarian and no gluten free, but it's just cooked really, really well. And I grew up with my dad, barbecuing on Sundays, and there's just a certain way you do it there, and it's just awesome. So actually at this event, since it was down in the Central Valley, they had tri-tip after it, and I was like, I feel like I'm at home.
Nice.
They had like tri-tip and whiskey, so it wasn't a bad day. I do like all foods though, so I mean, I won't turn down most things.
Yeah, me neither. Well, I really appreciate it. We're going to wrap things up, but is there anything that you would like to talk about that we didn't get to?
No, I think we covered quite a bit, and it's been really fun talking to you. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear a little bit more about the gravel adventures.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. It's been really exciting. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Good luck. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. I know it's totally a pain, but please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It really does help the podcast to reach more people and to get the word out about female athletes and women in sports. Just a reminder, Allie's Bar is still available for listeners at 50% off with free shipping using the promo code HERSPORTS. That means a box of 12 are only $14. And they taste great and aren't loaded with sugar. There's been a lot of chat about meal planning. I'm totally terrible at that and often find myself happily saved by an Allie's Bar. Also, check out the new layout of the Hear Her Sports website at hearhersports.com. It has a beautiful landing page featuring a design by Agnes Studio. It's easier to find the podcast you want and to listen directly from the site. Sign up for our newsletter and follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hear Her Sports. See you in 2 weeks.
Oh, I'm trying to have some coffee, so I'm ready for this.